Humanity's last hope hung in the balance as Captain Elena Rivera stared at the holographic display flickering in the dim light. The alien fleet, a monstrous assembly of ships from the Galactic Dominion, was closing in fast. No one had expected an attack of this scale. The coalition of alien species was vast, their technology sophisticated beyond anything humanity had faced before. Yet here they were, launching a preemptive strike to subjugate Earth. The reasoning was simple: humans were unpredictable, a wild card the Dominion couldn't allow to grow unchecked. In the command center, a tense silence gripped the room. Every face was pale, every gaze fixed on the approaching fleet. Admiral Marcus Graves, a man known for his ironclad resolve, broke the silence with a single, cold command. "Prepare the defenses. We're not going down without a fight." Rivera's jaw tightened as she activated the tactical overview. The numbers were against them. The alien ships bristled with weapons capable of tearing through Earth's defenses like paper. But they hadn't come this far by playing by the rules. Humanity had always thrived in impossible situations, and this would be no different, if they could pull off what Graves was planning. "Captain, the enemy's focusing on our orbital platforms. We have maybe 10 minutes before they're within range," one of the officers reported, his voice trembling. "Then we need to make them regret underestimating us," Graves replied, his tone sharp. He turned to Rivera, eyes hard with determination. "Elena, is the countermeasure ready?" Rivera hesitated for only a fraction of a second before nodding. "It's ready, but it's untested. If it fails..." "It won't fail," Graves cut her off. "We don't have the luxury of second-guessing. You know what's at stake." The countermeasure was a last-ditch gamble, an electromagnetic pulse device designed to scramble the aliens' targeting systems, buying Earth's fleet precious seconds to strike back. But it had never been tested against technology as advanced as the Dominion's. If it worked, they'd have a fighting chance. If it didn't, Earth would be a burning cinder within hours. Rivera's fingers flew over the console, locking in the sequence. Her mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts: fear for her family, doubt in their odds, and the unshakable resolve that had carried her through every impossible mission before this. She was terrified, but there was no room for hesitation now. Lives depended on her. "Countermeasure is set. Activation in 3, 2, 1. Rivera's voice was steady, belying the storm of anxiety churning within her. The command center lights flickered as the pulse discharged. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but silence. Then the holographic display exploded with activity, alien ships faltering, their formations unraveling as the EMP took effect. The Dominion's calculated precision dissolved into chaotic maneuvers. It was working. "Now!" Graves roared. "All units, engage!" Human ships, battered and outmatched, surged forward in coordinated waves. Missiles streaked through the void, hammering into the confused alien vessels. The first wave of the counterattack struck true. 3 Dominion frigates erupted into fiery debris. A flicker of hope sparked in Rivera's chest, quickly tempered by the sight of reinforcements appearing on the display. "They're adapting faster than expected. We won't hold them off for long," she warned, her voice strained. Graves didn't flinch. "We just need to hold long enough to make them bleed. Let them see what humanity's made of." As the Dominion regrouped, sending volleys of plasma beams and kinetic rounds, the true test began. Humanity's resolve, ingenuity, and sheer defiance would be pitted against the cold efficiency of an empire bent on their annihilation. Rivera stole a glance at Graves. His face was carved in stone, but she knew him well enough to see the tension in his eyes. Failure was not an option. They couldn't afford it, not when the future of their world hung by a thread. "Brace yourselves," Graves ordered, gripping the console as the alien ships surged forward. The real battle was just beginning. The command center buzzed with frantic activity, the glow of consoles painting every face in cold blues and greens. Captain Elena Rivera's gaze darted between screens, monitoring the chaos outside. The initial countermeasure had bought them time, but it was slipping through their fingers. The Dominion ships were recovering, adapting with terrifying speed. Their formations tightened as they resumed their relentless advance, shrugging off the damage like an angry beast shaking off a scratch. Enemy reinforcements inbound. Estimated arrival, 3 minutes. An officer called out, his voice laced with dread. Rivera's fingers clenched around the edge of the console. 3 minutes might as well be an eternity in this fight, and their resources were dwindling. Redirect fire to Sector 9 and keep their flanks exposed, she barked, her tone sharp but controlled. Admiral Graves moved to stand beside her, his eyes locked on the battle map. We're pushing the limits, Captain. They're trying to pin us in. Rivera nodded grimly. We're running out of tricks, sir. If we don't break their lines soon, we'll be boxed in, and that's game over. Graves glanced at her, a shadow of a smile playing on his lips. You're not thinking small enough. We need to make this hurt. He pointed to a cluster of enemy cruisers massing on the left flank. They're the linchpin of this assault. If we can drive a wedge between them, we might just punch a hole through their advance. It's a suicide run, Rivera said, though there was no fear in her voice, only calculation. It's what we do best, Graves replied, his tone devoid of irony. But we're not sending men to their deaths. Not yet. Rivera's eyes narrowed as the realization dawned on her. You're suggesting the hammer. The hammer was the Alliance's most brutal weapon, a kinetic impactor that could tear through armor with catastrophic force. Designed for planetary strikes, it was never intended for fleet combat. But desperate times demanded desperate measures. It's unorthodox, but it could tip the scales, Graves said, folding his arms. We send the hammer in a straight shot, target their command vessel, and collapse the entire flank. Rivera hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'll get it prepped. But we'll need to draw their fire first, keep them distracted until it's too late for them to react. Graves gave her a tight nod. Leave that to me. Prepare the hammer, and I'll give you the time you need. As Rivera relayed orders, the mood in the room shifted. The fear was still there, but it was laced with grim determination. If they could pull this off, they'd turn the tide, if not win, at least hold the line long enough to buy Earth a chance. Graves stepped to the center of the room, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Listen up, everyone! This is it. We're hitting them where it hurts. We distract them, take out their command, and we send these bastards limping back to wherever they crawled out from. Make every shot count! The response was a resounding chorus of acknowledgments. The room hummed with renewed energy as every crew member locked into their role. Rivera watched it all, feeling the surge of hope battling the cold reality of their situation. They were fighting with everything they had, betting it all on one desperate move. The hammer was armed and ready, its course locked onto the heart of the Dominion fleet. Rivera's fingers hovered over the activation sequence, waiting for the right moment. The seconds stretched like hours as the Dominion ships closed in, their weapons primed to crush what was left of humanity's defenses. Now! Graves' voice rang out. Rivera slammed her hand down, launching the hammer. The display showed the impactor streaking through space, a comet of metal and vengeance aimed straight at the enemy's core. The Dominion ships scrambled, but it was too late. The hammer struck with a cataclysmic force, obliterating the enemy command vessel and scattering debris across the void. A stunned silence filled the command center. For a moment, the Dominion's advance faltered. Then, as if in unison, the alien ships began a frantic retreat, peeling away from Earth's defenses. They had bled, and now they knew, humanity was not so easily broken. But Rivera knew better than to celebrate. The real war was just beginning. The flickering lights in the command center mirrored the fragile hope in every crewmember's eyes. Captain Rivera barely had time to register their temporary victory. The destruction of the Dominion's command ship had sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet, but there was no room for complacency. She watched the tactical display, noting how the alien ships reorganized with ruthless efficiency. The Dominion wasn't retreating, they were regrouping. They're adapting again, Admiral Graves muttered, his voice a low rumble. They've switched their formation, focusing on precision strikes. They're probing for weaknesses. They're not giving us a moment to breathe, Rivera replied, clenching her jaw. Her mind raced, evaluating options. We need to force them into overextending, make them commit before they're fully coordinated. Graves nodded. Agreed. But this time, they won't fall for simple tricks. We have to bait them into thinking they've found an opening. Rivera's eyes narrowed as she pulled up a holographic map of the battlefield. What if we give them what they're looking for? We weaken a segment of our line, intentionally, but prepare an ambush when they move in for the kill. High risk, high reward, Graves said with a grim smile. I'll rally our reserves to reinforce the trap. But it's going to be close. As they finalized the strategy, the room fell into an uneasy silence. The crew knew what was at stake. Every decision now carried the weight of their survival, or annihilation. Rivera felt the pressure settle in her chest, but she forced herself to remain focused. There was no room for hesitation. The Dominion's next wave hit harder, faster. Coordinated energy blasts sliced through space, tearing into the Alliance's defenses with surgical precision. Automated alarms blared as shields buckled and hulls cracked under the onslaught. But it was all part of the plan. Rivera kept her gaze locked on the targeted sector, watching as the enemy funneled into the trap. Steady, she murmured, her hands poised over the controls. Just a bit closer. The enemy's ships surged forward, sensing an opportunity to break through. In their haste, they missed the subtle shift in Alliance positions, the tightening net that would soon close around them. Rivera's pulse quickened. Now! A wall of fire erupted from concealed turrets and waiting warships, catching the Dominion fleet off guard. For the first time in the battle, their disciplined advance faltered. Confusion rippled through their ranks as they struggled to regroup under the sudden, overwhelming counterattack. Push them back! All units, advance! Graves' voice rang out, commanding with authority. The Alliance forces surged forward, hammering the enemy from all sides. Explosions blossomed in the void, debris scattering as the Dominion's formation splintered. Victory seemed within reach, but Rivera knew better than to celebrate prematurely. A shudder ran through the ship as a critical alert flashed on her console. Incoming! Large energy signature detected! Rivera's heart sank as the source materialized on the screen, a massive Dominion dreadnought, bristling with weaponry. It was unlike anything they had faced so far, a flagship designed for extermination. The command center went silent as everyone stared at the behemoth bearing down on them. Even Graves' stoic composure cracked as he muttered, So, they've been holding back. Rivera's voice cut through the tension. We can't let that thing reach Earth. If it gets through our defenses, it's over. Graves met her gaze, a grim resolve in his eyes. We're out of time and options. We're going to have to take the fight to it, directly. The dreadnought loomed on the screen like a shadow over their hopes. Captain Rivera could feel the weight of every life aboard her ship pressing on her shoulders. The Alliance fleet had fought valiantly, but this behemoth was designed for one purpose: total annihilation. She had no illusions. If it reached Earth, there wouldn't be a planet left to defend. We can't match its firepower, Graves said grimly, eyes locked on the tactical display. We'll have to outthink it. Rivera nodded, her mind racing. We lure it into a kill zone. If we can focus our fire on a single weak spot, we might just punch through its shields. Graves studied her, then slowly nodded. All or nothing. Let's make this count. The plan was simple in theory. Bait the dreadnought into overextending itself, then concentrate every remaining weapon on a critical point. The execution would be anything but. Rivera's fingers danced over the controls as she relayed orders to the fleet. The Alliance ships repositioned, feigning retreat to draw the Dominion flagship in. It took the bait, its enormous bulk plowing forward, unrelenting. All units, focus fire on grid coordinates Alpha 7, Rivera commanded. Her voice was calm, but tension coiled in every syllable. This was it, the moment that would decide everything. The void lit up as every available weapon discharged in a unified barrage. Beam weapons sliced through the darkness, torpedoes streaked like shooting stars, and kinetic rounds hammered against the dreadnought's shields. The concentrated fire cracked the barrier, sending ripples across the energy field. But the behemoth was built to endure. It weathered the storm, advancing inexorably. "Shields are holding, but they're at the breaking point," one of the tactical officers shouted. "We need more firepower. We're giving it everything we have." Rivera snapped back, frustration bleeding into her tone. "If this doesn't work..." An explosion rocked the ship as a stray shot from the dreadnought's batteries slammed into their hull. Sparks flew from overhead consoles, and alarms wailed in chaotic symphony. "Hull breach on Deck 7! A voice called out, barely audible over the din. Rivera gritted her teeth. "We're not done yet! Redirect auxiliary power to weapons! We've got to break through!" The ship's system strained under the demand, lights dimming as energy was funneled into the offensive. Another volley erupted from the Alliance fleet, and this time, a glimmer of hope appeared. The dreadnought's shields buckled, flickering under the relentless assault. "Now! All ships, fire everything you've got!" Graves roared, slamming his fist onto the console. The final salvo was deafening. The dreadnought's shields collapsed, and the concentrated barrage ripped into its exposed hull. A series of detonations rippled across its surface, spreading like wildfire. The Dominion vessel shuddered, its advance slowing as internal explosions tore it apart from within. "They're losing control!" Rivera's heart pounded as she watched the dreadnought break apart, piece by piece. A cheer erupted across the command center, but Rivera held her breath, waiting for confirmation. The behemoth drifted, a dying giant, before a cataclysmic explosion tore it asunder, scattering debris across the battlefield. Silence followed. The once terrifying flagship was now a smoldering ruin. Rivera finally allowed herself a breath, her shoulders sagging in exhaustion. "We did it," she whispered. Graves placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression a rare mix of relief and respect. "You did it, Captain! Earth is safe, for now." As the remaining Dominion ships scattered, beaten and leaderless, the Alliance fleet began the slow process of regrouping. They had survived, but the cost was evident in every wrecked hull and fallen comrade. This victory was earned through sacrifice and determination, human traits the Dominion had underestimated. Rivera stared out at the stars, the weight of what they'd achieved settling in. The fight was far from over, but they had proven that when humanity marched to war, they did so with unyielding resolve. For now, they had bought themselves time to prepare, time to rebuild, and time to stand together in the face of whatever came next.